You look at the clock, but the numbers don't mean anything. The hands move. The world moves, but something in you stays still. It's not laziness. It's not distraction. It's something deeper, something broken in how you experience time itself. Let's talk about temporal disconnection. When your mind no longer believes in before and after, it starts slowly. You forget what day it is. You lose track of how long you've been sitting in the same spot. You blink, and an hour disappears. You blink again, and it feels like days have passed, even though nothing happened. Time slips, not outside, but inside. Let's talk about the psychological collapse of linear time. Most people think of time as a line, a past that stretches behind, a future that waits ahead, a present that holds you right here. But for some minds, especially minds fractured by trauma, dissociation, or severe anxiety, that line breaks. It warps. It loops. It vanishes. You stop feeling like a person living through time and start feeling like a ghost caught in a still image. Let's talk about dissociation and its relationship to time. When you dissociate, you don't just float away from your body. You float away from time. Your memories stop lining up. Your actions stop making sense. You watch yourself do things, eat, shower, scroll, sleep, but there's no continuity, no flow, just fragments. And in those fragments, you lose a sense of now. You're not present. You're not absent. You're just adrift. Let's talk about trauma-induced timelessness. For people with PTSD, time is not a river. It's a landmine. The past isn't behind you. It's beside you. It's inside you. You hear a sound, smell something familiar, see a face, and you're not just remembering, you're there. Again, as if no time has passed, as if the danger is happening right now. That's the terrifying truth about trauma. It doesn't obey the laws of time. It doesn't care about clocks or calendars. It lives in loops. Let's talk about mental time distortion. You try to plan your day, but it feels impossible. The hours don't line up in your head. Your tasks melt into each other. You start one thing, forget why, abandon it, and fall into a hole of scrolling or silence. 5 minutes can feel like 5 hours. 5 hours can disappear like 5 seconds. And it's not laziness. It's not procrastination. It's a psyche that no longer trusts the rhythm of time. Let's talk about the anxiety of timelessness. When your sense of time breaks, you lose more than just your schedule. You lose your narrative. You lose your sense of self. Because identity is built on memory, and memory needs time. Without time, your life stops being a story and becomes a blur. You ask yourself, what did I do this week? You don't know. What did I feel yesterday? You can't remember. Where am I right now in my life? And suddenly, you're not sure. Let's talk about the crushing stillness of timeless depression. There are days, no entire eras, where nothing changes. You wake up, you survive, you go back to sleep. But it doesn't feel like a day has passed. It feels like you're still in the same day from last week, last month, last year. Time doesn't move forward. It folds inward, and you get trapped in the fold. Let's talk about time as an emotional construct. People think time is a physical law, but emotionally, time is something you feel. You feel it when you wait, when you hope, when you regret, when you long. But if your emotional system is numb, blunted by burnout, grief, medication, or mental collapse, then time stops feeling like anything at all. You stop waiting. You stop looking forward. You stop regretting. You stop remembering. And that is when time dies inside you. Let's pause here. You think losing track of time is just forgetfulness. But sometimes it's your mind crying out, I no longer know what part of life I'm in. You are not lazy. You are not weak. You are not broken. You are a person whose mind is trying to survive in a world that doesn't pause, even when you do. And maybe, just maybe, the first step back is not forcing yourself to rush into time again, but learning how to feel it return. There's something strange about how the past behaves when your mind is no longer rooted in time. Most people think of memory as a shelf, neatly labeled moments stored by date and relevance. They believe the past is gone, archived, closed. But when you've lived through trauma, when your nervous system was flooded with fear or shame or helplessness, the past doesn't stay behind you. It lives beside you. Or worse, it becomes you. Let's talk about intrusive memory. You're washing your hands, the water's warm, you're thinking about something random, then suddenly, a flash, a smell, a sound, a face, something from years ago that you haven't thought about in ages, comes crashing into your awareness with the force of a freight train. You freeze, your breath shortens, your body reacts as if it's happening again, because to your brain, it is. Let's talk about trauma loops. When something deeply painful happens, especially when it's repeated or unresolved, the mind struggles to process it, and so it does what it knows. It tries again and again and again. You replay the conversation. You relive the humiliation. You refight the argument. You re-feel the fear. Not because you want to, but because your mind hasn't found a safe ending. So it loops endlessly, waiting for a resolution that never arrives. Let's talk about emotional time traps. Have you ever noticed that some emotions feel eternal? Grief, for example. It doesn't pass like hunger or boredom. You don't just get over it. You carry it. Some days it's light. Some days it's crushing. But it's always there. And on certain days, your present is hijacked by a past you never got to heal. A song plays, a scent drifts by, a stranger says a phrase, and you're not just remembering, you're back there. The same pain, the same confusion, the same helplessness. That's not imagination. That's your emotional clock refusing to tick forward. Let's talk about fragmented memory. When time breaks in your psyche, your memories don't arrange themselves into a timeline. They float. They collide. They vanish and reappear in no logical order. You remember the feeling of a night, but not where you were. You remember the room, but not who said what. You remember the scream, but not what triggered it. And so your identity becomes a puzzle with missing pieces and no image on the box. Let's talk about identity collapse. You say things like, I don't know who I am anymore. But what you really mean is, I can't feel the thread between who I was, who I am, and who I'm supposed to become. Because that thread is time. And when time dissolves, so does continuity. You become a stranger to yourself. Looking at old photos feels surreal. Reading your past journals feels like spying on someone else. Hearing your own voice on a recording feels disembodied. It's not just nostalgia. It's dissociation. You are watching your life instead of living it. Let's talk about psychological time compression. When the present becomes unbearable, the mind retreats. Sometimes into the past, because at least it's familiar. Sometimes into imagined futures, because at least they offer control. But when your mind does this constantly, you stop experiencing the now. A week passes. You don't remember how. A conversation ends. You forgot what you said. You blink, and your whole day is gone. And the scariest part, you're not even sure you lived it. Let's talk about the fear of time loss. You open your calendar, you see the months fly by, and panic rises. What did I do with all this time? Why can't I remember anything? Am I wasting my life? But time isn't just being wasted. It's being erased by a brain trying to survive. Because when you're overwhelmed, your brain deprioritizes memory. It shuts down long-term encoding. You don't store the moment, you just endure it. And once it's over, it's gone. Let's talk about emotional flatlining. You stop looking forward to things. Holidays come and go without meaning. You forget your own birthday. You don't mark seasons anymore. Because when time becomes irrelevant, so does ritual. So does celebration. So does growth. You become stuck in a psychological fog where nothing matters enough to rise above the blur. Let's pause here. You think the past is behind you, but if your mind never processed it, if your heart never healed it, if your body still reacts to it, then the past is not past. It's present, and that's the curse of timelessness. You live in the now, but carry the weight of every moment you never escaped. There's something uniquely terrifying about a future that never feels real. You try to imagine tomorrow, but it feels thin, weightless, like a fog you can't walk through, like a door you can see but never open. Let's talk about psychological time paralysis. You have plans, you have goals, you write lists, you even feel a spark of motivation, sometimes. But when the moment comes to act, you freeze. You scroll, you dissociate. You clean something you don't care about. You eat just to fill time. Because somewhere deep in your psyche, the idea of moving forward feels unsafe. Let's talk about the fear of future pain. To the traumatized brain, the future isn't full of possibility. It's full of threat. Every new job is a potential failure. Every new relationship is a heartbreak waiting to happen. Every new goal is an invitation to disappointment. So the brain protects itself by not going forward, by sabotaging motion, not because it hates progress, but because it associates progress with pain. Let's talk about learned helplessness. You've tried before. You've started things. You've made changes. But somewhere along the way, life taught you a brutal lesson. No matter what you do, it won't matter. So now, even when you want to grow, your body won't move. Not because you're lazy, but because your nervous system remembers the heartbreak of effort that led nowhere. Let's talk about the false promise of someday. You keep telling yourself, I'll start next week, when I feel better, when things calm down. But someday becomes a graveyard for every dream you were too afraid to chase. And over time, your mind starts to sense the truth. You're not living, you're waiting to feel ready, waiting for a version of yourself that might never arrive. Let's talk about decision fatigue and temporal overload. When your brain doesn't trust time, every decision feels massive, permanent, dangerous. You obsess over options. You replay scenarios. You doubt your own desires. You fear missing out, but you fear committing even more. So you stay still, not because it's what you want, but because every path forward feels like a trap. Let's talk about the internal resistance to hope. Hope is dangerous. It raises you up just to risk the fall. So when you've been broken enough times, your mind starts doing something dark. It kills hope before it can grow. You talk yourself out of applying, out of reaching out of dreaming. Because if you never try, you'll never fail. But that logic becomes a prison. You start to believe you're protecting yourself by avoiding life itself. Let's talk about time looping as emotional avoidance. You keep watching the same videos, eating the same meals, revisiting the same memories, doing the same routines, not because you love them, but because they feel safe, predictable, controlled. The present becomes a loop because the future is too uncertain and the past is too painful. So you hover in today without fully inhabiting it. And the days blur. And you forget the last time you felt anticipation. Let's talk about existential stagnation. You wake up and ask, what's the point? And you don't mean it sarcastically. You mean it. Why chase anything? Why move forward? Why even bother? Because deep inside, you feel disconnected from the arc of time, the feeling that life is supposed to go somewhere. And without that sense of direction, you start to unravel. Let's talk about the fear of becoming nothing. When you stop believing in the future, you start to lose your sense of becoming. You're not evolving. You're not transforming. You're just continuing. A day passes. A month passes. A year passes. And you feel the same. Or worse, you feel less. Less alive. Less certain. Less connected to who you thought you'd be. And a quiet terror grows. What if I'm stuck like this forever? Let's pause here. You thought the future was a light to walk toward. But for a fractured mind, it can feel like a void. Not because you're incapable, not because you're unmotivated, but because your inner sense of time was damaged by fear, by disappointment, by trauma, by a world that punished your effort more than it rewarded your existence. But even now, if you close your eyes and breathe, you might feel it, a quiet flicker, not a full vision, not a goal, just movement, the tiniest impulse forward. It won't come from pressure. It won't come from force. It comes from safety, from trust, from the slow, sacred act of believing that something new is still possible. It doesn't come back all at once. There's no loud moment, no bell that rings to announce it, no switch that flips. Time returns the way sunrise does. Slowly, softly, through shadows. Let's talk about what it means to heal time. Because yes, you can heal your relationship with time, but not by forcing it, not by rushing. You heal time by first admitting that it broke. Let's start here. You are not behind. You didn't waste your years. You are not too late. You were surviving. And survival doesn't look like progress. It looks like stillness, like numbness, like collapse. But inside that collapse, something stayed alive. Something watched, waited, listened. And that part, the one reading these words, is the part that's ready now to feel time again. Let's talk about rebuilding rhythm. Time is not just clocks and calendars. It's rhythm. It's breath. It's cycles of presence and pause. So you start small. You wake up and make tea, just because you said you would. You stretch for 1 minute, not to become flexible, but to remind yourself that 1 minute still matters. You light a candle at sunset. You write a line in a notebook. You touch the floor with bare feet and whisper, "This is now." These are not tasks. They are rituals. And rituals are how broken psyches re-enter time. Let's talk about anchoring in the present. The present used to be a fog, but it doesn't have to stay that way. You reclaim it by noticing the body, the way your fingers feel, the taste of your food, the sound of your own breath, not as therapy, not as a chore, but as a return, because when the mind has been lost in time, only the body knows how to come back. Let's talk about trusting the past again. The past used to attack you, used to jump out of nowhere, grip your chest, and remind you of everything that went wrong. But healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means making peace with the version of you that lived through it. So you visit your memories gently. You let them speak without letting them scream. You say, "Yes, that happened. Yes, it hurt, but I am here now." You separate then from now. You let the past become past again. And slowly, the timeline straightens. Not perfectly, but enough. Let's talk about imagining the future again. It used to feel like a threat, like an endless test you couldn't prepare for, like a hallway with no doors. But you don't need a 5-year plan. You don't need a mapped out life. You need one image, a place you want to be, a version of yourself who feels safe, a moment that hasn't happened, but could. That image is a seed. You don't chase it. You water it with rest, with honesty, with boundaries, with curiosity, and one day, without forcing it, you realize you're not just surviving anymore. You're moving. Let's talk about time as a friend, not a threat. When your psyche lives outside of time, everything feels urgent or pointless. But when you return to time, you realize something strange. Time was never your enemy. It just didn't make sense when you were hurting. Because time doesn't heal all wounds, but it allows healing. If you stop fighting its flow, you stop needing to rush. You stop needing to delay. You learn to meet the moment as it is without needing it to be different. Let's talk about grief for lost time. There's a sadness that comes when time returns, because you see all the years you couldn't feel, all the moments you floated through, all the birthdays, hugs, sunsets you didn't experience because you were too far from yourself. And it hurts. It hurts to realize how much you missed. But that grief is also proof. You are here now. You are present enough to feel what was absent, and that is sacred. Let's talk about integration. You are not your past. You are not your freeze. You are not the blur of forgotten years. You are the one who woke up inside it all. You are the one who reached for something real. You are the one who chose to rebuild slowly, imperfectly, honestly. Time is not something you chase anymore. It's something you hold, moment by moment, with breath, with intention, with kindness. Let's close here. You thought time was gone. You thought you lost it forever. But time was waiting. It was always waiting for you, not to catch up, not to run faster, not to accomplish more, just to feel again, to remember again, to hope again. And now you do. You know what hour it is? Not by the clock, but by the heartbeat. It is the hour of return, the hour of quiet reentry, the hour when you become part of time once more.